Everybody ready? Okay, we're coming to order, starting the meeting a few minutes early. It's 6:57, 6:58 according to my phone, so we're going to use that. For starters, we're going to do new member recognition, member, visitor, and guest introductions, and my laptop did not sign on, so I'm doing this the old-fashioned paper. Let's start with Richard.
Richard, N7NT.
Tom, Q7R.
I'm Steven, 7TX.
Another Steve, K7SP.
Norm, N9AV.
Brian, W7JET.
Walt, NJHE.
Bill, W7 Zulu Tango.
Jim, K7MY.
Mike, N7MW.
Gary, KC7CS.
Ron, WA0KDS.
Reinhard, K7RGG.
Bill, AA4Q.
And can we have introduction?
I'm Virgil, K7VZ. If you're on Zoom, introduce yourself, please.
Jim, KC1BB.
Israel, K7NO.
And K9DR.
Bill, KO7SS.
Mike,
Bill.
KC7V.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't tell what order we're going. Sid, K5XI. I'm a new member, and this is the first meeting I've been able to attend.
Cool.
This is Bob, NA7RH.
Mike, K7ING.
Bill, K6WSC.
Craig, Kilo Golf 7 Alpha Zulu.
Sounds like we're good to go. First, Sid, K5XI, welcome to the group. Welcome to the meeting. It's an entertaining process by the time it's all over with, and we'll see where it's going to go. Hopefully not too long tonight. We're going to concentrate on programs. One thing I would like to do first, though, I got a card from Janet Margelli, and I want to try and read it and not tear up. If I do, I'm good with it. Unless somebody else wants to read it. Okay, I'll wing it. And it says, John and CADXA members, thank you for your very kind letter of condolence. It is so comforting to know Chip touched so many lives in ham radio. After over 45 years together, I have many fond memories, including us meeting and touring K7UGA's station many years ago. So nice to keep the call sign active. I hope you all continue to enjoy our hobby as much as Chip did. 7388's Janet, KL7MF. So I tear up on things like this, and I'm good with that. So that's the first starter. The next thing we're going to do is the program, and Bill Straw, KO7SS, is going to do a presentation on the Bouvet Island expedition from 2023 earlier this year, February-ish. And Bill, he's been chasing DX, being DX, and contesting for over 50 years or so. He's got numerous experience in operations in his collection of activities. And earlier this year, he was one of the operators on the Bouvet expedition and is going to share his experiences with us tonight. So, Mr. Bill from Bouvet, since we have two Bills, you have the floor, sir. Go for it.
So is my screen sharing up there?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so you see the picture of me in the orange outfit?
Correct.
Oh, very good. Okay, well, hi guys. I gave this talk before I left, and This is the follow-up. This is the same slide set that was seen in Dayton and Visalia, but I've added some of my own slides because I gave this talk up in Vancouver a month ago at the Northwest DX convention. So we'll just, let's see. Let me see how, oh gosh. Okay, so I'm Bill, 66 years old from Tucson. This was my first and last DXpedition. Never been on a boat other than a scuba dive boat. I heard about the DXpedition through Northern California DX Foundation. A couple other physicians got hold of me. So my qualifications, I'm an ER urgent care physician for 40 years. My current employer for the last 7 years is NextCare. There's probably 40 of them up in Maricopa County and 10 down here in Pima County. I'm a CW RIDI contester. I'm able to take off 7 weeks from work and pay $25K up front. So that's the qualifications. I told my work that I'd be gone in January and February, and they said, well, I'll put you on the March schedule. So the way I sum up my activity, I was a team doctor on a Norwegian DXpedition to a Norwegian Antarctic island. That was my participation. I was on the food and antenna groups and the medical team with Mike, AB5EB, who's an ER doctor in Austin, Texas. So other than that, I had no planning for the public relations. I had no planning for the boat. I just had to show up with the antennas, which I built in Tucson and shipped off to Norway. So everybody kind of knows about Bouvet. It's the most isolated point on the face of the earth from another human being. Probably everybody in this DX group knows all this about Bouvet Island. It's covered by a glacier. There's only a couple landing spots possible. Previous expeditions were different than this one, as the next slide is going to show. So Bouvet only has 2 landing spots. There's literally only 2 spots that have a beach that you could land on. One is at the weather station, which is where all these previous DXpeditions were. That is on the northwest side of the island. That's favorable for DX. Nice path to Europe, North America. But that is a Norwegian seal preserve, and there will never, ever be anybody that ever lands again at the weather station. Not by helicopter, not by boat, not by anything. So the only other beach is Cape Fee. That's it. That's the choice. When you look at the map, it looks like there'd be other possibilities, but we sailed around the island a couple times just to confirm it, and there is no other possibilities. So it was an unfavorable location on the southeast side. The horizon was blocked to 5 degrees to North America, 3 degrees to Europe, and it was a straight shot to JA, and long path was very good. That turned out to be a big part of the expedition. So again, this was the team. I was part of a Norwegian expedition. I guess Dave, WD5COV, he's from Deming, New Mexico. So in April of the year before we left, we all flew over to Norway to the superstation LN8W. And we set up the entire camp. We set up 3 tents. We set up all the antennas. We set up all the radios, the computers. We made contacts. We had it running. We packed it all up and we put it in a shipping container. So there was many possibilities to get to Bouvet. We could have gone from Cape Town down. We could have gone from the tip of Argentina. But we chose to leave from the Falkland Islands. The main concern was the shipping container that left Norway. We figured if we sent it to Argentina, we may never see it again, or we'd have to pay some $10,000 bribe to get it. So we had it sent to Falkland Islands. So the de-expedition, we all met up in London. And then the way you get to the Falkland Islands, there is a Royal Air Force Falkland Islands shuttle. The Falkland Islands are kind of isolated from South America because of the war they had with Argentina. So the Royal Air Force has this twice a week shuttle. It's 18 or 19 hours long. I can't remember. Stop number 2 was in D4, Verdi. And so we flew for 10, 11, 12 hours. And then we flew for another 8 or 9 or 10 hours. We landed in the Falkland Islands. And so this was the trip. So we met up in London on January 10th. This is London pub. This is our personal gear. That's the Royal Air Force shuttle. There's no premium seats. Everything is cattle call. 90% of the people on there were soldiers, and they allow some civilians. We landed in D4 on January 12th. And down there, Mount Pleasant, that is the Royal Air Force Base on the Falkland Islands. So the Marama was our ship. We originally wanted to go on the Braveheart, but the pandemic just messed everything up. One of the problems with ships of any kind, whether you want one with a helicopter or whether you want a sailboat or something like the Braveheart, is you have to pay a third of the price of the ship a year in advance. And so the price of the Marama was $500,000, and a year before we had to come up with $133,000, and that was with no guarantee that the expedition would even happen. And so we would have liked to have a ship with a helicopter and potential Zodiac landings, but those were literally, honestly, $1 million with $300,000 due a year before. So the Marama is a previous racing boat, 101-foot ocean ketch. It's based in Ushuaia, Argentina. And the 3-person crew basically runs tours between Ushuaia, southern Argentina, to Antarctica. They've done it for the last 12 years. They do 2 or 3 trips. We were our last trip for their season. We left in January. We had them for 42 days, and they were going to drop us off in Cape Town. And part of the Norwegian government's permitting to land on the island is that the boat had to stay there. They couldn't just drop us off. So we showed up. We had the container from Norway. We had 7 tons of stuff. We had everything. We had diesel generators. We had masts. We had beam antennas. We had 14 K3 radios. It took us 3 days to load all this on the boat. It was long. It was hard. Then we hung around the Falkland Islands, met the picture that says January 13th is at one of the restaurants in the Falkland Islands, and that is literally all the VP8s that you'll probably ever hear that we met with. So then on January 17th, it was time to go. We were on this sailboat. The crew was very experienced. There was the captain, the first mate, the cook, and then the guy that's in the orange suit, that's Peter. He is our hired camp guide. He was our videographer. He had a 4K drone, and he was actually technically part of the crew for those purposes. So this is what life was like on the boat. In the bottom right is my bunk. Adrian, KO7SS, had the upper bunk. That's my lower one. In the middle on the lower picture, that is our bathroom. We had so much stuff that out of the 7 staterooms, we only had 3 bathrooms. So this is what my bathroom looked like with the gear in it. That's the kitchen area with more gear. We had as much stuff as it was possible to imagine to bring because we had super big plans. That's Nina. She's the chef and quite the sailor. It was actually good French food. This is what we ate. Red wine every night. The crew was great. So it was a sailboat, which was actually good, because one of the problems with a voyage this long, to be able to carry enough diesel fuel, you would actually need a big boat. And as I said, the boat prices start at $500,000. And so a bigger boat with more fuel would have been more expensive. So the Marama actually worked fine. We were under sail 30 or 40, maybe 50% of the time. And sailing was significantly faster. We would do 7 or 8 knots under diesel power. And there were times we were hitting 18, 19, and 20 knots under sail power. It was quite the ride. It took us 2 weeks to get to Bouvet. So it was a little boring. We ended up having Starlink for some of it. We operated Maritime Mobile. We all took our turns on the radio just for fun, just for something to do. On January 31st, we arrived at Bouvet Island. This was the first view. Of course, the sun was out. We'll talk about the weather later. So this is Cape Fee. That we had no idea what we would find. This picture is from 6 or 7 years ago. It was from a South African Antarctic helicopter that flew around. That's it. The satellite photos, every time the satellite flies over once a day at 10 a.m. in the morning or noon or whatever, and it's cloudy all the time. So we had no idea this was going to be our beach, and we were going to be up on the left-hand side on top of that ridge. So we were prepared to go up the glacier. We were prepared to climb up the rock face using rock climbing gear. As it turned out, we landed, and that glacier had melted back another 150 feet. We literally just walked up onto the ledge from the beach. All the planning, all the mountaineering, all the glacier climbing gear, didn't need it. Just walked right on the beach and up. But we had no way of knowing that. So on January 31st, we were pretty excited. We sent a scouting mission just to see what the story was, because we had no photos. We didn't know. So we sent 1 Zodiac and four people to the beach. This was kind of a problem. I don't know how closely any of you followed it, but basically the weather closed in. We landed the 4 people on the beach, and then the weather basically closed in for 2 days. And they were trapped on the island during that time. We could take the Zodiac close to shore, and we could throw barrels of stuff to them that would float to shore. But they were trapped there, and we finally got them off on day 3. That was the scouting mission. And then we realized our plans for 10 stations, diesel generators, beam antennas was out the door. There was just no way that was going to happen. And for 2 reasons. One, it was getting it onto the beach, but more importantly was to try and get the stuff off. There would always be opportunities, sometimes a week apart, to get off the island. But we didn't want to ruin things, and we didn't want to leave anything behind, being it was a Norwegian expedition to a Norwegian Antarctic island. And so we scaled back the entire plans. I mean, the goal was to get on the island. The goal was to make some contacts. So the first 4 people got on the island. That's on the left-hand picture. That's them after we dropped them off in the Zodiac. And it turned out all we needed was a 30-foot extension ladder. Like I said, the glacier had previously covered all of this and had melted back. All we had to do is walk up the ladder, and we were on that ridge line at Cape Fee. On the right picture, that's where the 4 people spent their 3 days unable to get off the island, no radio gear. That turned out to be the wind-free spot. This turned out to be our porta potty area. because the wind never blew there. So then we organized the second landing. 9 people wanted to go on shore. We had totally scaled everything back. 1,400 pounds of equipment versus 12,000 pounds that we had brought. So what we had a pulley system, a triangular shaped pulley system. We had an anchor buoy offshore. And in the left upper picture, you can see this rope that pulls through those eyelets that were anchored into rock. So it was a continuous loop. So we could pull stuff. We could throw it off the Zodiac without landing on the beach, and we could just pull the stuff on shore. The Zodiac landings. We did those. I mean, that's how we got off the island, and we brought some stuff there. But it was actually very challenging. The sand was not sand; it was black BBs. So you couldn't get any footing. You jump off the Zodiac, you'd sink in above your ankles. So when we actually landed on the island, instead of beaching the Zodiac, we actually put on our survival suits and we pulled ourselves onto the using this rope system. A couple guys had floated and set up the rope system. And then we jumped off the boats and we pulled ourselves into the island. And then we floated this stuff, our equipment on board. So I think this will upload. This is us floating floating onto the island in our survival suits. So the Zodiac is dropping us off. We're going into the water one by one. And we're pulling ourselves on shore. You can see how deep the footprints were. The problem with landing the Zodiac was first the waves, and then the stuff that looks like black sand is not black sand; it's the size of beads. So it was not like the SEAL team movies that you would just jump off. So that's how we got onto the island. The air temperature was during the day, it was typically 35 to 38, maybe 40 degrees. The water was 34 degrees. And as far as the weather on Bouvet, it was their summertime, and it'd be very familiar to people from Arizona. Every morning you would wake up and the sun would be out. This was what every single morning was like. It was blue sky. The sun would wake. It was their summer, so the sun would come up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. The whole tent would warm up maybe to 50 degrees. And then the monsoon would kind of hit. The weather would just sink at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The wind would start blowing. And then at 8 o'clock at night, it would calm down again. It was absolutely an Arizona monsoon. So as far as the weather, it was sunny. It was lots of blue skies. So we had all these plans. We had 3 big tents. We had cots. We had operating tables. We had latrine shelters. We had everything. But we couldn't bring any of that on shore. So we brought 1 tent. We had the kerosene heater set up in the middle of the tent. We had enough kerosene to run it for a half hour each day, when we first woke up in the morning and then when we cooked dinner. Otherwise, we just hung around the tent. We only had 2 radios. We would operate in 2-hour shifts. Otherwise, we just kind of hung around, walked around, laid in our sleeping bags. So that was our porta potty. It was a Home Depot drum toilet seat strapped to the top, but it was in the area where there was no wind. So it was tolerable. So we had trouble getting food into Norway. Norway has very strict customs controls. So everything had to be sourced in Norway. And this was actually really good. The Norwegian meals ready to eat, MREs, they were actually really good. We had leftover ones and we were eating them on the boat all the way back to Cape Town. But so we had enough to have 2 or 3 of these meals each day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So our antennas, we had Yagis, we had 6 crank up masts that went up to 30 feet. And we ended up having 2 fiberglass elevated base verticals. And then we had a 30-meter vertical from DX Engineering. I had built all these verticals, these 3 verticals I had built and tested in my backyard here in Tucson. We never got any of the beams or any of that stuff on shore. So these were the 3 antennas. So each of those fiberglass masts, we had multiple possibilities for elevated base verticals. We had 10, 12, 15, 17, and 20 meters. We had multiple kits so we could swap them out. There was always a question that we found out about our band selection. The goal was to work unique stations. And so what we found out is anybody that we worked on 17 meters, if we went to 15, it was the same loud JAs, the same loud Europeans and North Americans. We were using N1MM, and so we could see when we had worked people. And so basically we decided just to use 15 and 17 during the day and 17 and 30 meters at night. And 30 meters was the big surprise. I'm sure we were working long path. We were working North America after our sunrise. And the stations were super loud. So this was the shack. We had brought 14 K3Ss. They were our personal equipment when Elecraft had offered us some K4s, their new thing. But then we took a poll amongst the 13 operators, and we all had 2 K3Ss of our own. So you know what? We put them in Peli cases and we brought them. So we had 2 K3Ss and a gasoline generator and 2 laptops. That was it. That was the entire station that we could get on the island. So FT8WW was on Crozet at the same time, and via sat phone we made a sked with them on CW. It was kind of funny, the Bouvet working Crozet on I think it was Crozet. I'm blanking, but yes. Anyway. So on Bouvet, there's basically 3 kinds of wildlife. There's penguins, there's seals, and then there's predatory birds. The penguins are the food source. The predatory birds pick off the baby penguins and then drop them from 50 feet, and that's how they kill them. And the seals eat the penguins if they can catch them, but the seals are fairly slow. So these pictures were taken right outside our tent. There was a very loud, messy penguin colony just 120 feet from our tent. So that you can see the Marama view off in the back. The penguins would walk every day. I guess they would go down and they would feed, and then they'd bring back they'd walk all the way back up the cliff to feed their babies. So the killer whales would sometimes eat penguins. Sometimes they would fall off the cliff and we would find ones with broken legs at the base of the cliff. And if the seals could catch them, they would get eaten, and the predatory birds picked off their babies. So they kind of had a rough life. Sometimes they'd fall in the water. They would go over the side of the cliff and you'd find them at the bottom with broken legs. But this is them walking right by the tent. all day, every day. So these are some of my slides. So what was most stressful for me? You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave from the Hotel California song. So every day started out like Tucson and Phoenix with the monsoon, but this is what it was like every day by 4:30 in the afternoon. And what would happen is when the waves, if a storm came through and really riled up the waves, it would stay like this even the next morning when the sun was out. That's what the waves would look like. And so we were on the island for 11 days, and at various times we had planned to leave the island, and finally the only chance we had to leave the island was on day 11. And the captain told us that his computer modeling said the swell would only be 12 inches and the wind would be 5 miles an hour, and that we needed to be on the beach at 7 a.m., take everything down. And on day 11, we did. We hopped on the Zodiacs and we left. But this is what it looked like most of the time. So if you were to fall on some penguin shit and break 3 ribs, you'd have to get back to the boat off this. If you broke your hip, broke your femur, broke your wrist, got pneumonia, passed a kidney stone. So for me, as one of the physicians, that this was my thing to worry about constantly. I mean, nobody's going to leave this island. And so sometimes the waves would stay like this for 3 days, even though the sun was out and it was 40 degrees. The other stressful thing was 9 people in a 5 meter, 15-foot diameter tent, no shower for 11 days. We could only run the kerosene heater for half hour in the morning and half hour dinner. So it was always 32 to 40 degrees inside the tent. We couldn't bring any cots. We had just little light sleeping pads, hard dirt floor. So that's me down in the right-hand corner sleeping there. That's Mike looking at his videos. He was the other physician. So on the last day on Bouvet, of course, remember the captain told us to be ready to leave at 7 a.m. So the picture on the right, that's what it looked like every morning at 7 a.m. It was absolutely gorgeous. And so we always said we can't let anybody see these pictures. They're going to say, well, we thought Bouvet was the worst weather in the world. Well, it was at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just like monsoon storms. So the picture on the left, that's what it looked like every afternoon. And the picture on the right, that's what it looked like every morning. So basically 2 weeks to sail back to Cape Town. We bailed off the island and a big storm came through. We actually had to sit for 36 hours on the opposite side of the island, hiding from the storm before we could even leave for Cape Town. So this is just us sailing into Cape Town. So unloading, we had those blue barrels. We had 20 blue barrels full of stuff, and we only had 6 on the island. And so the customs workers that were supposed to inspect our stuff, they were actually happy just to take everything we didn't want. And so we put it all back on the crate to send back to Norway. So these were the QSO stats. And the most important for us was the unique stations at the bottom. 46.5% were unique contacts. 8,600 people got Bouvet in their log. And like I said, we started out with multiple bands, and we ended up on 15, 17, and 30 because it was the same stations working us. The JAs were incredibly loud. I mean, we were 100 foot up over saltwater to JA with I mean, they were 50 over 9 on CW. So basically the total cost was $715,000. We ended up giving $50,000 back to the DX community, and the I guess Central Arizona donates through the Northern California DX Fund. Thank you guys. So we gave some of the money back. These were our various sponsors. We had an amazing amount of equipment. We had a boat with tons and tons of equipment. So that was our. So I don't know how many people have seen the video on YouTube. I don't think I'll bother showing it because I don't have an upload speed that probably would support a YouTube video on this format. But we did have a videographer with a 4K drone. And if you just go to YouTube and type in 3Y0J full video or 3Y0J, you'll see a picture of the full video. It's about 15 minutes long, and it's absolutely fantastic 4K pictures. So I think that's it. Questions?
Yes, Bill, this is Israel, K7NO.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, what's your opinion about RIB, radio in the box operation for Bouvet? Do you see that coming anytime soon?
Yeah, I think, yes. I think our, yes, I've worked AA7JV on a couple of his E51D and stuff like that. And, that would have worked out well. I mean, if we had a helicopter, you could just drop off 2 guys and the radio in the box. Or if you could manage to get one in the Zodiac. Like I said, the problem with the Zodiac was you'd step off of it and sink past your ankles in the black stuff. And as far as the helicopter, the Norwegians sat offshore one time for 5 days. They couldn't even land at their own weather station because the weather was so bad. And they had a military helicopter. And so would we have had a better chance with a helicopter? It's hard to know. But yeah, no, the radio in a box would have been wonderful because it turns out we had Starlink on the boat. We didn't have internet on the island because the Starlink equipment is relatively fragile, so we didn't bring it ashore. It would have just gotten broken. But yeah, so to answer your question, the RIB, that's definitely what would be next.
All right, thank you.
Anyone?
There was a tremendous amount of DQRM. Any idea where it was coming from?
No, it was, there was times when the band would be open to the entire world. We would be, I mean, especially with FT8, which is weak signals, there'd be times we would be working JA, North America, and Europe on 30-meter FT8. 17 meters was often open 24 hours a day, so it was impossible. And we were working split, so we couldn't hear it, whether it was local or DX QRM.
Yeah, my one QSO on 17 meters with 3Y0J was difficult through all the DQRM.
Was it CW?
Yeah, it was CW.
Yeah, it was, well, we had SPE amps. We had a whole bathroom full of 2K FAs and 1.5 FAs. And it's like, we just never got them. And the stations that we were working, it was perfect gray line propagation. And lots of stations were 30 and 40 over 9 on CW. And all we had was the 100 watts in a vertical.
Thanks.
Any others?
We got a question in the room.
Yeah.
Okay. Of the operators, how many elected to just stay on the boat during the expedition, and kind of how did that all happen?
Well, some of the people that were in the first group of 4 that were trapped on there, it was a little scary, and they didn't want to go back. And so we had, yeah, what's happened? What do we had? We had 8 people, and Peter, our camp guide. So we had 8 operators that went back on the island. So let's see. Let me see if is this video clip showing there?
In your slides, it looks like.
Yeah. So you can see this?
No, we're not seeing a video. We're seeing like your first slide or your last
Oh,
slide.
okay. Well, yeah. So anybody else?
We're seeing PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to bring up a FT8 or a little video. So you didn't see any video clip?
Negative.
Okay. Yeah, you guys really should go watch the 3Y0J 4K video on YouTube. I still sit and watch it about every 3 or 4 days.
All right, I'll find the link and send it out to the email reflector.
Yeah.
Any more questions from anybody? Okay, Bill, thank you very much for the presentation. And thank you for the effort that you and your team members put into this. We really appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Break time. I'm
have
sorry.
a
Go
good
ahead.
evening, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.